Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show.
It's 200 episodes of Casual Chats.
Oh my god.
Wait, yeah, I know, right?
200? Oh my god.
I know, right? It's
Feels
like
so old.
I know. I found a wrinkle on my face. I have gray hair all over myself.
Well,
I think I'm
have no
getting
hair,
lumbago.
So I can't say I have any gray hair, but oh my god, when you say 200, I just feel like where's the prune juice and the and like the oh my god,
Yeah, I know. I think it's almost time for like my 8 o'clock nap.
Jesus. Oh,
I know, right? We've been it's been
jeez.
crazy. We've been doing this for 10 years, and
Can you believe it? 10
I
years.
know, 10 years. It's been amazing. It's wow.
It is insane. It really is insane. What was the first topic we talked about?
Oh man, okay, before we go into that, I think we should just start off with, why we decided to do this podcast in the first place. Okay, it was 2011. Neither of us had work. We were both depressed. We started Old School Lane to talk about our favorite things from our childhood. Then about a year later, we were like, you know what? I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time anyway, because we've known each other since we were like 10 years old and in the 4th grade. And we already kind of like talked about this stuff anyway. So it's like, we still talk about like Nickelodeon stuff like Doug and Rugrats and all that stuff. It's like, there's this new concept called podcasts out there where people like post their stuff out there for people to listen to, and we were like, yeah, we could do that. And so that's how we got literally started, with just like hopes and a dream, and like $5 and just prayers and hopes that this thing would actually work out. Our first topic was about Nickelodeon, and it was just our fond memories of just like looking back on everything that we've ever done on in terms of like watching our favorite shows and all the cool events that would used to happen, and memories of like Nickelodeon Studios and Mark Summers and all that stuff. So that was literally our very first podcast together.
Well, I remember you were very keen on contacting a lot of these people, and I remember you said that if it wasn't for social media, there would have been no way you would have gotten a hold of them. And I remember you were like on Twitter, you were on Instagram. I was very thoroughly impressed of all the people that you contacted, because I was just like, wow, I didn't even know you had contacted them. It was insane.
Yeah. I know. It was like, do you remember when we first got a hold of Mark Summers and we asked him questions on our blog, and he was like really cool with answering all of our questions? And
I love Mark. Yeah. He
was
so cool. He was so down to earth, and he was so like, what I loved was that he was so open to talk about stuff, and he was just so he was very like friendly, very warm, and he was just like, you could talk to him about anything, and he was just like he was willing to answer it, which I thought was so awesome.
Yeah, like I know that growing up, he was your hero because not only because of Double Dare, but also because you have OCD and so does he. And you asked him questions about like how was he able to overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I have severe OCD, and I know he has OCD, so it was very comforting to hear from someone who has it and what they do and how they deal with it because um, a lot of people, I mean, they try to be open with it, but it's not very easy to live with. And yeah, he is my hero. I love him. I love him very much because he's very he is very open to talking about it and not brushing it to the side and not like saying, okay, like I have this and I'm trying to work on it, and well, you're on your own, basically. No, he was like, well, this is how I deal with it. It was difficult, but yeah, it was just that was definitely my favorites. And my favorite was talking to Jim Jenkins, who did Doug.
Yeah, that was also another favorite of mine. So the story about that, of how we got a hold of Jim, was when we went, if you can believe this is almost 10 years ago, when we went over to the Slimed book event in New York City at the Net 92Y, and we saw all of the people that were interviewed for Matthew Klickstein's book.
Well, hold on, not to cut you off. Not to cut you off, you really should tell the story of how we actually got those, because that was I couldn't believe it. You want to go? You want me to say it, or do you want to say it? Because
No, okay. I'll just lead. I'll just lead like how we first heard about Matthew, and then you can tell that story. So, I first heard
if I
about
can remember correctly, because I don't really remember.
Okay. So I remember that Matthew used to do all of these blog retrospectives on basically like this old website that I don't think exists anymore, because I tried clicking on the link the other day and it doesn't work. He did these really thorough retrospectives on Nickelodeon that I've never seen before, where he talked about like Roundhouse and Welcome Freshmen and Pete and Pete. And usually when I see like those kind of blogs at the time, it was just like, okay, these are just like people's opinions on the show and stuff like that. But this guy was like not only giving you like a retrospective of how these shows happened, but also like interviews that had never been seen before of the cast, the crew of all of these shows. And I thought to myself, at the time when we were doing these blog interviews, like we got in a hold of a lot of people, I was like, I got to get a hold of Matthew. And so I wrote to him and he was like, oh yeah, sure. This was like my very first interview that I've ever gotten a hold of for anybody. And so this was like even before he even announced his book. This was how old it was. And so about another year later, he announces the oral history book. And then I would say a few months after that, we got him on the podcast. And then he was promoting this huge gathering over at the 92nd Y. And now, Kevin, you can tell this story.
Well, if I remember it correctly, because it was kind of funny. So I remember you got the tickets, I believe.
Yes, I did get the tickets.
You did get the tickets, but then I don't remember. I remember there was like, oh God, I'm trying to really.
I think I remember this. I now that you jogged my memory.
We ended up in the VIP room. That's all.
We ended up in the VIP room. Yes.
We both. I swear this could have been like a scene from a sitcom, because we both had the biggest, widest, like our mouths dropped to the floor, because I don't know how we were able to do it. We got into the VIP and we got a free copy of the book.
Yes.
So I don't know. I just remember. All I remember is we went to the ticket lady, and she was kind of nasty. Actually, I remember she was kind of rude.
She was not very nice.
Yeah, I remember she was definitely not happy to be there, and I know words were exchanged, and then we suddenly ended up in the VIP.
Well, the reason why we ended up in the VIP room was because we heard about the VIP room. And then I asked, hey, are there any other tickets for the VIP room? And then she says, these are literally the last two. And I'm like, I'm getting these tickets. I'm getting these tickets so that we can go to the VIP room. we went over to the VIP room. There was like a whole bunch of like refreshments, and there was alcohol there, and like all the people from like like Jim was there, Vanessa Coffey was there, the various hosts of Double Dare, Harvey was there. We met up with Hardy Rolls, aka the dad from Pete and Pete. We met up with the actor who played a Sam from Clarissa Explains It All. We met up with Jessica Gaines from Wild and Crazy Kids. That's where we got all of our photos from. If you ever look in our social media pages, where we got a hold of, there's Fred Newman there, Jim
I had
Jenkins,
hair
Vanessa
back then,
Coffey.
by the way, so you won't know. If you see me now, I look totally different.
Yeah. This was back when we were still young and full of dreams.
So you won't recognize me because I had hair. Well, there's a funny story with that I have to share.
Oh yeah, please do so.
I remember. So I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, and I'm not saying I was very ungrateful, Matt. But what happened was a lot of the voice actors who were there did not have the voice actors who were there, and some of the actors were there did not have name tags. So not that I'm saying that I'm a Nickelodeon illiterate, but very embarrassing. But it wasn't like, so I went there, and I remember there was a woman sitting on a chair, and I talked to her, and she says, "Oh, you're a fan of Doug." Actually, this is a very funny story. So she said, "Oh, you're a fan of Doug." I go, "Yeah, I love Doug. In fact, Doug, I was obsessed with Doug." Now, this is a true story. So this was the very few. I mean, I watched all the Nickelodeon episodes. I watched them religiously, but Doug, for some reason, I watched every single episode when it aired. I had the VHSs, and when they sold it to Disney, and I won't get into that because I know there's a lot to say about that, but I won't go into that. But they had put out Doug plushes of Doug, Patty Skeeter, and Porkchop. And I owned the Doug. I still have the Doug doll. I will never get rid of that. And I told her about that. And then I told her how I used to keep a journal. But because I suffer from OCD, my handwriting, I was so nervous that my handwriting was sloppy, so I would constantly tear pages out. And then finally I just gave up. And one day, I don't have the photo, but I swear to God, I dressed up as Doug one day to school. And what had happened was, I was talking to her about this, and her mouth was she was like, "Oh my God, that's like so amazing and everything." I'm like, "Yeah," And I was just talking to her, and she turns around, and I was telling her like, "Yeah, I watch it from time to time because this is when people were uploading episodes on YouTube and stuff." And then after we talked for a little bit, she says, "Oh, do you know who I am?" And I said, "No." I says, I do apologize. She kind of was taken back by it, not as an insult, but kind of, she says, I'm the voice of Judy. I go, "What?" I says, "Oh, hi." And I was so embarrassed, but it was a casual embarrassed. I don't know if that makes any sense. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was just like shocked because if I knew who it was, I would have been like, but I felt so bad because I had no idea who this was. So yeah, that was an interesting story because I was just like, "Oh, you're the voice of Judy. I didn't know that."
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
again,
you're lucky
even
because I didn't get to meet her, and you were the one who did. So that's
I was
crazy.
talking to her, we were having a full blown conversation, but like, but she wasn't. So let me just point this out because I don't want it to come across as she wasn't snobbish about it. She wasn't like, "Oh, I'm the voice of Judy." She wasn't like, "Oh, I'm shocked that you don't know who I am." It was more like, I guess because because we were just talking about Doug, and I was just like, I didn't know who she was because I didn't know what she looked like, and I was just like, "Oh," but like my I guess my expression was like, "Oh," like, "Oh," it was like not like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So yeah, I mean, it was just name tags definitely would have helped, but
Yeah, I agree.
no, it was a very fun experience. I remember that it was just a wonderful show. We actually got front row seats, believe it or not.
Yeah,
And
we did get front
actually,
row seats, and believe it or not, if you actually watch it, because you can watch
we're
it
in
on
it.
YouTube, you can see us.
Oh yeah,
Like
I was gonna say you could see us.
you can see us, and we're also in the On Your Mark documentary when Mark was on the stage and he was like presenting his opening, because he was the one who wrote the opening for the book, and you can literally see us.
That was a good documentary, by the way. We
It was a
actually just
great
saw
documentary.
Alamo, and that was a very wonderful. I feel was I actually would love to rewatch it again.
I would love to
Uh,
rewatch it too, but unfortunately, it's not on DVD. And
yeah,
seriously, Matthew, release the DVD. We want to watch it again. I
yeah.
remember when we went to the Alamo, it was yourself, Christina, and then myself, and we saw we had a really great time over there. We had a really good seats, and we actually got to see Mark try to slime someone, and also Alex Brightman was there. He was introducing the documentary project, because he was also one of the producers, and this was years before he even did the Beetlejuice project. In fact, we literally heard about the Beetlejuice project, the Broadway musical, in that show. Like
Hmm.
it would be released like about like another year or two later. But yeah, you remember the project that was literally like promoted, that was going to happen later on, Mark
Hmm.
Summers, the Adventures and Life of Slimes.
Hmm.
That was going to be that one man show. It didn't happen until literally, as of the recording of this, last week.
Oh wow.
They're finally doing it after, like, it's been almost 6 years since we've heard about that announcement.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was.
another thing that happened, if you remember, Ross Hull, who played as Gary from Are You Afraid of the Dark, was at that Slimed event, and I remember that he did a small little documentary about like his experience of playing as Gary in Are You Afraid of the Dark, and he was at that Slime book event. There's actually footage of you talking to him about that you liked the character because he wore glasses and you wore glasses.
I actually like that because so here's a little backstory for me for Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I really hope if they ever hear this or not, but I resonated with the character so much because it was a combination of both very good acting and very well written. Because normally, and I don't want to say this for everything, but normally when you have a character with glasses, they're very nerdy and they're very like sheepish and very um, like they're a loser or whatnot. Gary was able to play this character like not the stereotypical nerd. He wasn't even a nerd at all. In fact, when you watch it, I mean, he was like the leader of the Midnight Society technically with his brother, and like basically he kind of stood out from the stereotypes of saying, "Hey, here's this character. I came up with this group who tells terrifying stories." And I mean, they all ragged on one another, but it wasn't like it was nice it was a great fresh breath of air to finally see a character who's just not in the nerdy demographic. Like it was great to see a guy with glasses because I had glasses, and and it was crazy because when the show had aired on Nickelodeon, that was the time that I had to get glasses, and I was kind of very nervous that I was going to get picked on because I was so young and I was bullied. So I was just like, oh God, now I'm wearing glasses. I'm going to be a target. But then I saw, you know, Gary and the Midnight Society. I was like, oh, well, here's a cool character and I can relate to that. And nobody beats him up. Nobody picks on him. He's a leader. And so that's why I really respected him. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's a silly thing. No, for me, it was so great to finally be able to say that. But I loved how Matt was able to get all these people from Nickelodeon to
Yeah.
come together. I mean, he got Billy West, he got everyone. It was just so crazy. It really was. It was just
It
like,
was
wow.
it was fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
And he would do this again, and we went to the second one that happened like maybe a year or two later, and it was a smaller venue, but we had a really good time with that as well. We had like Fred Newman and Dan Sawyer playing a lot of the music, and then Phil Moore was the host, and it was it was pretty good. I mean, it was definitely a lot smaller in scale because they were planning on a lot of things. Like originally, Mike Morona and Danny Tamborelli were going to be there, and Polaris, but they had to do something else at the time, so that didn't exactly work out. But yeah, I would say that our stuff in New York during that time was a great experience, and being able to be literally the first people ever to interview Matthew for his book was quite an honor indeed.
Mm-hmm. I would say so.
Yeah. And I guess we can go into Jim because that was also a favorite of ours. That was probably one of the episodes of our podcast that we're really proud of, where we got a hold of Jim. We talked to him about like his personal history with working on Doug, because we know it was like a passion project of his. And also we got to learn about some stuff that at the time was never revealed. Like, there were plans on like a Judy spinoff series, and then the Quailman spinoff series. And, then there was even like talks of like him wanting to do a continuation of Doug where they were in college, but that, unfortunately hasn't happened yet. So yeah, the stuff with Jim has been amazing. And Jim is a great guy. If you haven't had him on your podcast, or if you haven't like met him in person, like seriously, he's amazing.
I agree. I really loved talking to Jim, and that was just another one of my favorites. I would have loved to see the Nickelodeon Doug. And it's kind of sad too, because not to change the subject, but like when Netflix had that brief stint with Nickelodeon where they were doing like TV movies of like Rocco and Invader Zim and Hey Arnold, I would have loved if they would have did something with Doug. But I know like with the whole Disney thing, it's kind of like, with whatever rights and, but still, I think that would have been great to see Doug grow older, and as we grow older with the character, and the voice actors, just seeing them back in it again, it would have been really cool.
I would have loved that, absolutely. And just to get to see them one more time at least, where Jim gets to complete the story he's always wanted to, where Doug and Skeeter are in college, and then they have this huge school reunion. And yeah, I think that would have been really great to see that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, another one of my favorites looking back on the stuff that we did. So, yeah, we've done several podcasts together. Like we did the Shin-Chan podcast. We did Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. We did Tiny Toon Adventures. We did Turtle Talk, where we talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. Yeah, we've done like a slew of different podcasts over the past few years. So,
by the way, I'm sorry,
off topic. No, go ahead.
Those Shin-Chan DVDs are like, they're worth so much money. It is ridiculous.
I know.
I am so angry because Netflix had it, and I watched it, and I used to watch that all the time.
Yeah.
Then I thought Amazon Prime has it, but it's not available. So then I was like, okay, let me go watch it on DVD. You can't even touch those DVDs. I think a used one goes for like almost $200.
It does, because they're out of print now. Yeah, it's ridiculous considering that Shin-Chan is still huge in Japan. Like last year, there was a video game that came out on the Nintendo Switch, and there are like over 20 Shin-Chan movies now, if you can believe it. So yeah, it's still big in Japan, but not so much here in America.
I love Shin-Chan.
I love it too. Yes. It is so funny. We used to quote that all the time when we were in college, when that show was airing. We just loved how insane that the characters were. We just had a ball with watching it every single time.
Yeah. I mean, I just loved it so much, and I was just so disappointed that you can't really watch it anymore. I mean, you can technically, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if it's on Crunchy. I don't know like what other sites you can watch it on, but free without having to do it. But I was just like, oh man, I was like so happy that Netflix at one point had like the whole US dubbed seasons, and then they took it off. And then I mean, I think you could watch it on Amazon. Amazon has the movies, but it's different voice actors, so I was kind of disappointed about that.
It makes a lot of sense, considering that I don't think Funimation has the rights to it anymore. So they probably had to change the voice acting, which makes sense.
Yeah, I love Laurel.
Laura Bailey. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
sorry
is
about that.
awesome. I love Laura Bailey so much. She
Yeah,
she did a fantastic job. And
great.
Troy Baker as Astro Bastard. I'm sorry, like nowadays people know Troy Baker as like this serious voice actor. He's been in so many video games. He was Joel in The Last of Us and various other things, but just hearing him as like action bastard, it's
Oh my
like
God, there was a lot of it was actually crazy. There was a lot of voice talents in anime
yeah,
voices
yeah.
that were on the American dub.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, if you know about Funimation, you do know that there's a lot of like really prolific voice actors that you probably would be familiar with. Like as mentioned before, we talked about, Laura Bailey and Troy Baker. There's also Chuck Huber, who you may know as various other characters. He was a hero in Yu Yu Hakusho, and you may know him for various other roles. He's Hero. Colin Klinkenbeard is Hema, and you may know her for, being Gohan in Dragon Ball, and you may know her as Luffy from One Piece, and various. There's like so many, great people if you are familiar with the Funimation dub. But yeah, they did a great job of just like taking this show and just making it so wacky and crazy. It's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, another favorite podcast that we've ever done, and I'm still proud of to this day, was when we talked about Tiny Toons, and kind of relevant now because they're going to have the reboot coming up soon on Hulu, Tiny Toons University. And
Mhm.
I remember when we talked about it, this was when it was celebrating its 25th anniversary. We talked about how great it was that it was able to be one of the first of Steven Spielberg's produced animated shows where he was trying to basically take the idea of, let's just have these younger kid versions of the Looney Tunes characters, but actually make them different, and just basically have these really unique stories involving with them trying to learn how to be as crazy as, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Porky Pig and all that stuff. So they introduced new characters, they had new stories with them. We even talked in depth about how it was able to bring in a series of like female protagonists in a time in which there weren't a lot of them. So we even talked about that, and we talked about the Tiny Toons How I Spent My Summer Vacation TV movie, which I still love to this day. After over 30 years, every summer I have to watch it. It is a tradition for me. I've been doing it ever since it came out, and I still do it to this day.
I love Tiny Toons. Like I remember my favorite episode was the one with there was two. There was a, I mean, well, now that I think about it, I mean, well, this one was my favorite. It's the one where it's the FCC lady,
Oh, I remember
and
that one.
everything
Yes.
is too violent. That she has like this giant vacuum that like kind of sucks the. I mean, I don't think they used souls because it was a kid show, but their funniness or whatever. But it was souls. You obviously saw them. They all got stuck, and then like the vacuum exploded, and then like all their like souls went into like different bodies. Like it was really cool. And then I also liked the one with the black blob that was taking
Yes.
over Acme Acres.
Yes.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. And I also really like the fact that they were able to include music into the mixture. Like, that's how I got introduced to They Might Be Giants, was because of Tiny Toons, where they had like Particle Man, and
Oh my God,
they
yes.
had Istanbul, not Constantinople. So, I really just enjoyed watching Tiny Toons for the music alone. But yeah, I mean, everything about it was just so great, and I'm just curious about how they're going to do the reboot, because they're literally just starting over from the ground up on it. So I'm curious, especially since we both really liked the original.
Yeah, I remember still having my Buster Bunny and Babs Bunny doll.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of some other episodes that we enjoyed doing. I know a lot of the interviews that we've done have been some of our favorites. Like I know when it was, I think one of the last ones that we did together was the one with Sandy Fox, where it was you, myself, and Christina, and we interviewed Sandy Fox, who is the current voice of Betty Boop, and she's done a lot of other anime roles as well. And I remember that Christina was just so thrilled. It's like, I'm talking to Betty Boop. So I thought that was actually pretty great.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
so I got a hold of her because I wanted to do it for a podcast I was doing at the time where I was looking back on As Told by Ginger. I got a hold of Sandy because she was a character on the show named Mipsy Mips, and she was one of the bullies. And I asked her the question, do you want to do a podcast focusing on your role as, as Mipsy from Ginger, or do you want to just do a varied podcast where you get to talk about all your roles? And, that's what she wanted. And so I got you and Christina involved, and I was saying, hey, there's this voice actress who, has done a lot of cool things, and she's the voice of Betty Boop, and we know Christina loves Betty Boop, and so we needed to have her on the show, and just hearing about her experiences of how she got the role and all that kind of stuff, and also that time that she was on the Muppets as well. Which
I was just going to say that when she was on Muppets Tonight, she was.
Yes.
I forgot, she was like one of the cheerleaders or something.
Yes, I think she was. Yeah.
And also, another thing too was, even though I've done solo interviews and Patty's done solo interviews, we kind of bring it under the umbrella of casual chats and Old School Lane and whatnot. So when I talked to Kent, that was a really fun experience. He was with his son, and I was really nervous. That was the first time I was by myself. I was just so nervous. And then when I talked to Mistress Cleo, I was also nervous too because I've never done that. And I feel like Patty and I are like Abbott and Costello. It's like we can't be separated. If we're separated, it doesn't work. When we're together, we're as a team. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun talking to Kent because he was living through this, and he was talking to me about his experiences and whatnot. And then I wanted to talk. It kind of fell apart because I was trying to do the anniversary thing for Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, and she was the only one who responded back. So talking to her was really cool to talk about her work and her thoughts on the movie and how she felt because. It is a B film classic, and they just released it for the first time on Blu-ray, and so it was cool talking to her. They were really cool people to talk to, very patient, and they forgave me for being so nervous because I was like, I've never done this before, and you were like, I don't know these people. I was like, I don't care. I want you in this because I can't do this, No, in regards to that. Talking to them was talking to Ken. He's a really wonderful, wonderful guy, and I really respect him for having one of the most highest watched videos on YouTube, and just keeping it strong, and Cleo for just being so awesome and just loving what she does, admiring the craft of her art, and it was really cool talking to them.
Yeah. And I think that we both have our own experiences where we've been wanting to talk to people that mean a lot to us for the longest time, and we understand that they're really busy, and we understand that they have their own schedules. But once we do get a hold of them and we get to find out about their own personal experiences, about what they're known for and how they're able to get where they are today, and being able to share that with everybody for those who are interested in it, it really does make it feel like it was worth all the waiting and worth all the nervousness and anxiety. It's like, am I going to do this right? And am I going to ask all the questions that I'm able to? And no, I think that once you're doing it naturally and once you let them do all the talking, and once you're able to let your guard down and not be as nervous, the whole thing is worth it. I think that, some of our interviews have been pretty great in terms of how we feel of how the final product was. Overall, I'm still proud to this day of all the stuff that, we've done together. When we interviewed Paul and Joe when they were talking about their work on Rugrats and Recess. That was one of our favorite ones that we've ever done. And for our listeners, it's one of their favorite podcasts that they've ever listened to. In fact, it was a lot of fun. And that was actually the first podcast we brought Christina over for that one.
Yep, I remember that. I remember that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we just also want to point out that there's we have a lot of upcoming stuff that we're very excited about. So, I actually was going to talk to Patty about this, but we're gonna do it together. So, I have two. There are a total of 2 people who I want to interview, who hopefully they get back to us. I'm going to leave it as a surprise, because one of them is, well, actually, I'll give you a hint. One of them is a very popular actress who I'm very excited, and was in a band, a UK band who are really good still to this day, and another one is a YouTube sensation, and I had just discovered him, and I cannot tell you, he makes me laugh hysterically because his crazy antics just gets him into he's hilarious. I was going to say get him in trouble, but he's still on YouTube, and that's an achievement not to sniff at. And there are 3 other people who are famous on YouTube who I would like to interview. But I don't want to say anything yet because we haven't heard back from them. I do want to say that we are going to do a podcast dedicated to a band/TV show called Star Street, All Stars. So that's exciting. So that's going to be our next topic. And yeah, that's the upcoming project we're going to work on. I'm very excited about it. And yeah.
Yeah. Now, I actually pulled up a poll of our listeners, and they told us what their favorite podcast was of each year that we've been doing this. So,
let's hear it. Let's
hear it. So, we did 4 episodes of Casual Chats in 2012. I'm just focusing on topics. We'll go into the interviews later. Okay. So the 4 podcast topics that we did, episode 1 was Nickelodeon. Episode 2 was when we did Wreck-It Ralph, when that first came out. Then we, because of this is something that we have done once, and we haven't done it since. But when the Sandy Hook shooting happened, you were like, we need to talk about this, and bringing up about the severe, tragedy that happened. And so that's literally the only time in which we've ever covered like a real life tragedy, as opposed to like covering a TV show or a movie. And then me and Dave, aka Brick Club 85, we did the Sly Cooper trilogy. So according to our listeners, their favorite episode of that podcast of 2012 was the Nickelodeon one, which makes a lot of sense because we went over 2 hours discussing about our favorite shows and moments and memories of that. 2013, their favorite episode was the Pete and Pete episode, where it was myself, you, Alex DeCorville, his brother Nick, and Jim Bevan, who first appeared in an episode. And we did a lot of episodes. Bevan. Yeah, we still have Jim on our podcast to this day. He just did a podcast with us just a few weeks ago. So we're still in touch after almost a decade later. So, yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of other podcasts. We did the Beware the Batman when that first came out. We did Dinosaurs.
Oh, my goodness. I remember that.
Yeah, we did the Dinosaurs one. This was back when it was on Netflix, but now it's on Disney Plus. And still watch it. It's still great. Still an amazing show. And that's what we did. Crayon Shin-Chan. We did the He-Man podcast. But yeah, their favorite was Pete and Pete. 2014, that was a combination of several podcasts that were on the top. The best one was All That, but you weren't in that one. I think you were busy with something at the time. But the Sonic the Hedgehog one, where it was yourself, myself, and our buddy Tom, who is formerly on Comic Book Cast, but now he does his own comic books and stuff like that. So he's doing well. And yeah, we talked over 2 hours on Sonic, and it was like at the time probably our longest podcast ever. Then we did Ghostbusters, which I still really enjoyed that one. It was myself, you, there was let's see, who else was there? Alex was there. There was Gurning Chimp. I think Jim was also there. We talked about the two Ghostbusters movies, The Real Ghostbusters, Extreme Ghostbusters, and then the last thing at the time was the Ghostbusters video game. And then we even joked about like, oh, there's going to be a reboot of it. And then you told me to shut up. And if Hollywood heard me, they'll be on that faster than flies on horse shit. And what do you know?
I can't believe I said that.
Yes, you did say that. And 2 years later, it happened with Ghostbusters Answer the Call. And then, we got the other Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters Aftershock. And now there's going to be another one coming out this year. So, yeah, I guess I should have kept my mouth shut.
It's okay, Patty. We love you anyway. We're not
I know.
The Ghostbuster community's not going to hate you too much.
I hope not. Anyway, so 2015, the Tiny Toons podcast was actually one of their favorites, which I still, like I said, I'm still very proud of that. And then there was the Nickelodeon holiday specials that I did with John and Douglas from We Love Orange podcast. Then there's 2016, which we did several podcasts. We did the Rankin Bass Christmas specials. There was we talked about Amblimation, which was the discussion that I had with James, aka Jaime Tude, and Taylor, aka Y Boy, where we talked about Fievel Goes West, We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, and Balto. 2017, the best podcast that they loved is Sailor Moon. So it was myself, that long-haired creepy guy, and Ingoyama 70, and we talked about Sailor Moon. And wow. That was a great podcast. Looking back on the original Sailor Moon series, we'll talk about Crystal sometime in the future, so don't worry about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 2018, their favorite podcast was about the Nicktoon movies. I did this one with Remington and Kenny from the Nerd Talk podcast. We talked about like all the theatrical and TV Nicktoon movies, and that was also a lot of fun. 2019, their favorite podcast was when we talked about Rocco's Modern Life Static Cling, which makes a lot of sense because it was a great TV movie looking back on like the legacy of Rocco. So yeah, it was something that was really fun. 2020, because of, various circumstances, and you already know what they are, we didn't do as much podcasts as we did the previous year. So there wasn't a lot of it compared to, the ones we did in 2019 and 2018. But Goofy Movie and Extremely Goofy Movie was the one that a lot of people really liked. And then there was Dora and the Lost City of Gold, which those were really great. I'm still really proud of those. 2021, it was a tie between the As Told by Ginger podcast and the Owl House Season 1, which, I still think that those were really great. I did enjoy my conversations with the people behind the Nation of Animation podcast. Cool. Yeah, it was really great. And Tony Garcia, when we talked about Ginger, and then the Owl House Season 1, where we had myself, Arun, we had Paul Thomas, Fusionator, Rebecca Rose. So, yeah, that was also really great. 2022 was the Nickelodeon Halloween specials, which that was also really great. I really enjoyed looking back on those specials. I really enjoyed talking about what my favorites were and what everybody else's favorites were. And I asked also on our listeners of which years were their favorite years of the podcast. One of them said that the year of 2016 was their favorite because it had a lot of the Nickelodeon stuff. 2013 and 2014 was their favorite because of the topics that were being covered. And then there was also, pretty much every single year with the exception of 2014 and 2013, which makes a lot of sense because that was when we were just first starting off. And yeah, that's for the podcast. Now the interviews, on the other hand, are completely different. Like 2013, their favorite interview was with Craig Bartlett. Now we had a great time talking with Craig on the show. Like I remember I messaged Craig. This was back around 2011, and I waited 2 years for him to respond, and he said yes. That was actually really great that he was able to take the time to talk to us.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I also remember that I told them the story about the time when I was 17 years old, and I wrote a letter to Nickelodeon saying I want to see the Jungle movie happened, and then he actually drew me a Arnold Helga picture that I unfortunately lost when I moved from from one of my apartments in Florida to another apartment. So I can't believe that he still actually remembered that I wrote that letter almost 10 years ago, and I thought that that was really sweet that he actually brought it up.
Really, he brought it up?
Well, I brought it up, and then he kind of remembered. So that was actually really cool. That was like, oh, I'm sure that you got like thousands of letters from fans, and you actually remembered the one time that I might have written it to you. So that was actually pretty cool. Yeah, so 2014, their favorite was the one that we did with Paul and Joe. So, yeah, that was really great where we were able to talk to both Paul and Joe about working on Recess and Rugrats. I mean, all the cool stories that we were able to learn about that. That was really great. Especially since, like we said before, that was the first podcast that Christina was on. And that was also one that we got a lot of really neat stories we'd never heard of on the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm still really proud of that one.
That was a good one.
Yeah. And then 2015, their favorite episode was our 50th episode where we interviewed Will McRobb, one of the creators of Pete and Pete. And we talked to him about his experiences with working on Pete and Pete. We talked about Kablam. We talked about Snow Day. We talked about the music that was featured on the show with Polaris. So yeah, that one is still one, again, that I'm really proud of. And when I did my review of A Kid Called Mayonnaise from Amazon Prime, and Will was the one who created that pilot, and I forwarded over to him like the next day, I did that video, and he messaged me immediately saying, I had a feeling that you were going to do something like this. Yeah, because he knew that because I was a Pete and Pete fan, I was going to talk about what was considered to be a spiritual successor to Pete and Pete, and he actually really liked that video, and that made me really happy.
I'm glad he did.
Yeah. 2016. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a bias for me because, I mean, it is personal to my life. But 2016 was when I first brought Arun into the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, so Arun Mehta from the Arun Mehta Show, he has been, basically my co-host for the past 7-8 years, and now we're both engaged to be married. So
I wanted to bring that up, but I didn't want to do it unless you were okay.
No, please go ahead, bring it up.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that you're engaged, and I am coming to that wedding with bells and whistles.
Yes. It's actually kind of funny because people thought that we were a couple. Yeah, okay. First of all, I mean, I'm sure that, you guys already know that Kevin's already married, but, back then it was never an indication that we were a couple at all. I mean, we were just like really good friends. Several people, whenever that we did the podcast together, they thought that, are you guys dating? And I had to go and clarify that we were not dating. We were just like really good friends. We've been friends since we were like 10 years old. And apparently, for some people, it's like, oh, if you're really good friends and if you're a boy or a girl, that must mean you're dating. No, there is such thing as platonic relationships. But no, I mean, Kevin has been like a brother to me. And I think it would have been really weird if we would have been dating each other.
I would think so.
Yeah,
I love, and I consider you like a sister. I have loved working with you on this. This was like, I mean, this is, that's why I get so sad when I only interview one person. I want you to be there with me.
I know. I
hate when I'm interviewing these people by myself. It's not because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's because I want you to be part of it. And, it's like, you don't have to know these people. I mean, still, we're like Bert and Ernie, Abbott and Costello, Lowell and Hardy, Lois and Clark, and I'm talking about, the historical figures in the DC comics. We're I said Bert and Ernie already, right?
Yes, you did say Bert and Ernie.
We're like Bill and Ted. We're like Cheech and Chong, but we don't smoke pot.
Nope.
We're like, yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And we still are. I mean, even almost 30 years later, we still are the same duo who, does a lot of really cool projects together. In fact, one of our first projects when we were in school together is that whenever that we would go on a field trip, Kevin would draw comics and I would write them. And we would basically just, reenact on what we experienced on our field trip together.
And FYI, I can't draw for nothing. So I'm actually the writer right now, and Patty could draw very well. So as we
What are you talking about? I cannot draw to save my life.
You draw the best stick figures I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen anyone able to draw a stick figure better than you, Patty. So you nailed it.
That's true. Yes, I can draw stick figures that will make 5-year-olds weep. You're absolutely right.
Ah, see, don't sell yourself short. No pun.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'm glad that you guys said that Arun was your favorite interview of 2016, because he's also my favorite interview as well. Even though that there were a lot of great people that I brought over on the podcast in 2016. I mean, Greg Lee, who you may know for being the host of Carmen Sandiego, Kevin Shinnig, who also did Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego.
No relation to me, by the way.
Yeah, no relation. Even though that you have the first
we
name.
We have the first name, but there's no relation.
No last name, yeah.
No.
Right, because that's how it works. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of great people that we had in 2016, but Arun is one that means a lot to me. Is very personal and very close to my heart. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys said that. 2017 was actually a tie between when we had Joe Murray, the creator of Rocko's Modern Life, and Mitch Shower, the creator of Angry Beavers. I'm really proud of that. I still kind of feel embarrassed to this day when I mentioned to Joe about when Static Cling was being produced, and he was talking about, like, you know, the premise of, like, you know, Rocco, Filbert, and Heifer finally coming back into the future and, you know, reenacting about, like, what, you know, it was compared to the 90s. And then I mentioned about, like, well, technically they flew off in Future Schlock, which was already taking place like 30 years after the future. How is it that, and then I just brought it up. He literally just stared at me for like a good 5 seconds. And then he's like, it's a cartoon. Continuity doesn't really matter. And I'm like, fair enough. So here I am, I acting like some sort of analytical dork that'll be like a reference to like The Simpsons, in which like there's this guy who's like genius at work and just like bringing up a whole bunch of continuity errors. It's like, yeah, like just shut up, Patty. Just seriously. Anyway. Yeah, and as for Mitch, yeah, that was a great experience having Mitch on the podcast. I again, this was somebody I'd gotten a hold of for several years, waited a long time. He said yes. Joe is a pretty much similar thing, in which I messaged him like 3 years prior, hadn't heard from him, messaged him again, hadn't heard from him, messaged him again. Finally, he said, "Man, you're persistent, are you? Okay, we'll do it." And then I finally got a hold of him. So there was that.
Who was this again?
Joe Murray.
Oh my God, he said, "Man, you're persistent."
Yes, he did. He did say, "Man, you're persistent, aren't you?" So yeah, never give up on your dreams.
Was he joking about it, or was he like?
I have no idea. I when I talked to Joe, it's like I couldn't tell whether he was joking or he was being serious. So I like to think he was just joking. Maybe he just has a dry sense of humor. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Mitch was actually pretty cool. You know, we were just like talking, and he was outside in his porch smoking a cigarette and just like answering a whole bunch of questions that I had, where, you know, it was regarding about like, you know, some behind the scenes stuff on Angry Beavers, like a lot of the questions involving with like how, you know, Nick and Richard did a lot of ad-libbing, and also the episodes that never happened. Like there was supposed to be a second Halloween special involving with like homaging the Hammer films that never came to be. And also the continuation that he wanted to do, the Angry Beavers Respooted, where it was about, you know, Daggett and Norbert reuniting for the first time in years, where Daggett was still single and Norbert was married to Treeflower, and they had 2 kids. And, you know, still to this day, Nickelodeon hasn't picked it up yet. And, you know, where seriously, I mean, why haven't you at this point? But
that would have been, yeah, that would have been perfect if Netflix and Nickelodeon still were doing those movies.
Yeah, I would still love that, but unfortunately, I think management has changed, and so they're not doing that much of it anymore, which is unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen more continuations like that. But yeah, I think that the idea that Mitch had, where he wanted to have like a new take on the Angry Beavers, where, you know, they were going through like their new adventures together. I think I would have really loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah.
2018, we brought Craig back again. This was when he was promoting his Hey Arnold complete series on DVD, where he had all 100 episodes. He had the shorts, and yeah, it was basically like a complete package. 2019, I brought Kathy Wesseluck and Andrew Francis. We were talking about Cyber Six. Lisa Foyles from All That. We were talking about her time working on the show. 2020, it was Eric Roberts.
Wait a minute,
I
you
got
interviewed
that.
Lisa Foyles? I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I did. When I
Wait,
was so,
was it a written one or was it a voice one?
it was a voice one. It's on the YouTube
Holy
channel.
crap! And I missed that.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah. Go check it out. It's on YouTube and also on the podcast feed.
We gotta re-interview her again.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, she's actually I think she's going to be doing another podcast again. So yeah, we need to bring her again and talk about stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Let's see. There was 2019. There was those were the two that were the most popular. The Lisa Foyles one and the Kathy Wesseluck and Andrew Francis one. 2020 was actually in courtesy of my good friend. I just want to give a major shout out to him. So yeah, I want to give a shout out to Liam, who was able to help me out with acquiring a lot of these people who I got a hold of for these podcasts. So we had Daryl Vickers, we had Eric Roberts, Nikita Kalam, and they were the ones who pretty much was helping me out with like covering a lot of the interviews that I was doing from that time on. The other ones that were just like on my own were there was Ryan James, McIntyre, and Melissa Disney when we did the Quarantine Bunch, and then there was also Blake Swift, aka Shady Vox, and then Kat Calamia when I was promoting her upcoming independent comic. So Eric Roberts was the most popular one, and it makes a lot of sense because he's a pretty well-known actor. 2021, I brought Fred Seibert back again, and we were talking about his upcoming new studio, Fred Films, and we were just covering, the basis of like producing, animated shows for a wider audience, especially for an international audience. And we had a lot of really great comments regarding about like never giving up on your dreams and following your passion and doing a whole bunch of projects, even though a lot of people kind of like dismiss you for it. Martin Olson was one that I'm really proud of to this day, where I got him. He was a writer on Rocco and Phineas and Ferb and various other shows. We had a really great time reminiscing about various stories. And then finally, 2022, Sue Rose and Pat Irwin, who were Sue Rose, the creator of Pepper Ann, and Pat Irwin, who did the music for it. It was in time for the show's 25th anniversary. Really had a lot of great conversations about all the behind the scenes stuff on the show. Second place was Bill Burnett and Larry Huber, the creators of Chalk Zone, where we, covered the behind the scenes stuff on that. And also, one that a lot of people really enjoyed was your interview with both Kent and Miss Chloe.
A lot of people liked those?
Yes, they did. Your interview with Kent is pretty high up. It's actually, a lot of people really responded positively towards it.
Well, so here's the thing, guys. So here's the thing. So what I wanted to do. So I know I was talking about it before. What I ideally want to do, and thank you so much for the positive feedback, because originally what I wanted to do was I wanted to contact a lot of people who are into the paranormal. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to contact a few people. I actually am thinking about getting a hold of Kent again. Unfortunately, he did have to take a break from YouTube to do some personal matters. I actually was thinking about writing to him just to check on him to see how he's doing, and I will. I've just been going through my personal stuff, but I am going to interview more people who are involved in the paranormal. And as for Chloe, what happened was that was supposed to be part of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. As I mentioned before, I wanted to really talk to people who are associated with, who've done like independent films, who've done fetish videos, who've done all types of stuff associated with the movie and how that had influenced a lot of people. So stay tuned for that as well. So I'm gonna try to talk to people more with those. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride, and like I said, we've got some more people we are going to talk to. And I have a poll. If you want Patty to stay with me during these interviews, give a like, give a tally mark, because I want her part of it. I don't like doing interviews separate. I love when you're with me. So
All right, fine.
yeah, even if you don't know them, it's okay. And here's the thing about Patty, what a lot of people don't know. One thing about Patty is that we'll do a topic, and I got to tell you, and I don't want to embarrass you. I really don't. And if I do, please forgive me. But you know your stuff. So when you interview these people, you like do your research. So you'll watch the films, you'll watch the shows, you'll go on, you'll speak to people. I mean, you do your homework. So
I try to be prepared for anything.
Yeah,
that
you are prepared. You are beyond prepared. So, when we interviewed people of Nickelodeon, which you didn't mention before, but to before we do a closing note, Patty was always prepared. One thing I have to say about you on a positive note was that you always had questions that were relevant. If we were interviewing, like, say, Jim, I remember you had spent the whole weekend binge watching Doug. When we interviewed Mark, you had, I don't know, they didn't put what Double Dare and what would you do and all that stuff.
No, they didn't, but
you watched a lot of clips on YouTube, and
there was a lot of clips on YouTube at the time, yes.
Yeah, and you did research on him, so you do come prepared. So
yeah, and the same thing happened when we talked to Mark Weiner from Weinerville, in which we were like, okay.
I felt bad about that, because here's the thing: I love Mark so much, and if he's out there, Mark, I am so sorry. But when we were singing the Dora the Explorer song, I had to be openly honest. I didn't know it, so I was trying to sing with it. He's like, he's just embarrassed. No, it wasn't that. I love you, Mark, and I love Weinerville, and I actually, it's funny because on YouTube, they have episodes of the Jim Henson Hour.
Yeah.
And Mark was on there. He was on an episode.
Yeah, and also he's on SNL as well, and like early SNL. We're talking about 1981 early.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It wasn't I was embarrassed. I honestly did not know. But I applaud. But again, this goes back to Patty, because Patty had watched every freaking episode of Dora the Explorer.
I did not watch every single episode of it.
You watched a good amount, because you sang the
I did watch a good amount. Yes, but
I didn't know we were going to sing, and you were like, sure. And I'm like, oh, crap, I don't know any of these words. So I wasn't. So I'm sitting here sweating, and Patty's just like,
I had to.
I'm like, I don't know any of this. And no disrespect, because I know the characters, and I love his voice, and he is really, he was the most, I got to tell you, he was so funny, and he was so, I loved it. I loved watching him when I was a kid, and as an adult, I just as much love him, because he was just so full of life. And I swear to God, it was just like talking to him in person. But when he sang that song, and he's embarrassed. I'm like, no, I don't know any of this. But Patty knew everything about the song, so I applaud you for that.
Yeah, I try. I try.
No, you did. You knew the song in and out. And I'm going, oh crap! What do I do? What do I say? What am I gonna do? But yes, if we don't mind, on a closing note, as I mentioned before, we are going to work on. So it's gonna be. We're gonna talk about Star Street, because the show. It to me, it was like an early 2000s versions of the Monkees, which, if you don't know who the Monkees is, then you have lived under the biggest rock in your entire life and you need to get out of.
Or maybe they weren't born when the Monkees was around, to be fair.
Yes, and I'm not old, so.
What are you talking about? Of course we're old. We did 200 episodes of this
Would you shut up? Don't do that. I'm kidding. I'm only kidding.
I know you're kidding. How long have I known this for? For almost 30 years at this point?
Exactly. So just to give you guys a little taste of what's going to happen, Star Street. We're going to talk about that. And like I said, we have so far Patty, who, again, I applaud you, because you are amazing. And when it comes to detective work, this girl is on the case. She is. We already got 2 people who we're hoping to plan. So keep your fingers crossed that we hope we hear back from them. We are going to talk to a few more people I will definitely, like I said, Patty's very good with words when she contacts people. I don't know. I guess it's because she's a very good writer and she just like knows how to write emails. I am like too terrified. But yeah, just stay tuned for that. And if Patty, if there's anything you want to talk about before, let's go ahead.
Yeah, so Kevin and I have been wanting to do another podcast together for a long time where we were like, you know what? You
Very
remember
long
those
time.
weird? Yeah, I know. We went wanting to say, we wanted to do this podcast for a while now where we're like, those old weird shows that we just like that nobody seems to remember, and we were like thinking about like looking back on like some just weird stuff that is like really quirky and stuff that only a handful of people remember, but only the two of us remember because we're such dorks. So we'll probably maybe bring that up sometime in the future. Other stuff that's going to be happening now that it's a major milestone. I'm going to be going over to Atlanta for a convention called MomoCon. I'm going to be doing a panel, the very first panel ever of my life, where I'm going to be doing a very distinct workshop where I'm going to be talking about like writing analytical essays for media. So basically just like how I write my scripts for videos, how I do my research, how I do. Yeah, I know. Thank you. Thank you. How I do all the stuff that I do, putting it all together and, answering some questions and giving some tips and advice for anybody who wants to be able to do it on their own. So, yeah, my panel will be on Sunday, May 28th. And it'll be at 7:30 a.m. The room number, which I finally got the confirmation number for, it is room 404.
That's not your hotel room, is it?
No, it's my room, the panel room at the
I
the
thought it was your
convention.
hotel room. I'm like,
Why would I do that?
I don't know. I just don't want you to give that out.
God, no.
I was like, what's wrong with you? Don't do that. Then you're gonna have people knocking on the. Oh
Yeah, sure. It's like, hey, you want to come over to my room and find out? It's like, hey, you want to come over and learn about stuff? I could show you. It's like, no.
I think we got to end this podcast before.
I think we need.
Well, before we do that, we forgot to talk about, and I'm going to end it on a beautiful note.
What's that?
The one thing we forgot to talk about. So I'm going to give everybody a little history over here because I know like this is probably one of the longest ones we've done. But Patty is very bashful about this because I got her into a show called Chicken Run.
Oh God! No! Not Chicken Run. Chicken Run is the art animation.
I'm sorry, Chicken Town.
Oh yes, Chicken.
The total opposite of the class.
Chicken Run is good. Chicken Town is a fever dream and a half. Like seriously, you told me about this show 10 years ago, and I had to look it up. It was like this weird Canadian show that lasted for maybe like a few episodes. I told you, Kevin, what did you get me into?
See, I always do that when Patty likes to pick on me. She never picks on me, by the way, so don't do that. So I don't want to say that. But I'll be like, hey, Patty, let's watch an episode of Chicken Run. She'll be like, they'll be like dead silent. They'll be like, no noise. They'll be like, that's it, I'm not talking. But it's okay because another show called Bread Barber's on Netflix, and that just is equally as weird. So we're going to talk about that one.
And there's a lot of other weird stuff that we saw.
I don't have a weird food thing with shows between Chicken Town and Bread Barber. So anybody who listens to this, don't think I'm like into like these weird shows with food. I have like no like yeah.
It's better, and trust me, it's better than Breadwinners.
Yes. I thought Skadoosh was cool.
Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, there's some weirder shows that we took. We saw Shin-Chan for crying out loud, but yeah, like there were some other shows that we actually did enjoy that was kind of like weird. I mean, we enjoyed Bump in the Night and we enjoyed Freakazoid, but seriously, Chicken Town, there's no excuse for why that.
That's calling those shows weird to Chicken Town. It's like saying Snow White and the Seven Dwarves and Akira are like awful animated films.
Fair enough.
Those are milestone masterpieces, and Bump in the Night and Freakazoid are classics compared to.
Chicken Town is just like 48 flavors of awful. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I won't torture you guys enough, and I won't torture Patty enough. It was a wonderful time talking to you, Patty, and we will keep you updated on that Star Street. And that's going to be all the way from the UK. So Patty and I are going to hop over across the pond, and we're going to, boogie woogie with the stars.
I mean, you're joking, but I'm literally going to be going to England in about a month from now.
You can say hi to the Star Street.
There you go. I can say hi to them.
You can say hi to them.
Yeah,
Send me a postcard.
I will.
Also, and do it in your TARDIS. Okay.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.